Welcome back to GaleForceWins Season 3.
The GaleForceWins podcast is proudly sponsored by Newfound Marketing, a digital marketing agency located in St. John's, Newfoundland. Visit our website at newfoundmarketing.ca to find out how we can help your business grow. Newfound Marketing, a complement to your marketing team.
And welcome to another edition of GaleForceWins, and I have to tell you, we are having a great time in Hungary. Today we happen to be at the Budapest airport, and I want to tell you what a place this is. I have never, in all of my travels, felt such a friendly vibe in an airport. It's wonderful to be here. What do you think, Judith?
It was clean and tidy, and I think that was the first time for me that I happened to be on a runway.
You were running on the runway?
I was running on the runway.
So what are we now? What are we into now? Who are we going to talk to?
So we have this great guy with us who I had the fortune to meet when I moved back to Hungary a year ago. But Mike, why don't you start introducing yourself?
Okay, thank you. My name is Mike Carlson. I originally from a suburb of Vancouver in Canada, as you know, so from West Coast. Coquitlam's a bit of a hilly place, and I grew up on the bottom part of the hill, which kind of summarizes the neighborhood I grew up in, but that was a long time ago. It was a nice place to be. And I came to Hungary. I came for 6 months, 32 years ago. So, because I started working in Vancouver at a place called KPMG, which is one of these big accounting, auditing, consulting companies, and they gave me the opportunity to come to Europe when I was, a couple of years in KPMG, and they said, okay, Mike, are you interested in coming over to Europe to work for a little while? They gave me 24 hours to decide. I think it took about 24 seconds, and I said, yeah, I can hardly wait to get over there and take a look at what's happening over here. So it was very exciting.
So what was okay? You grew up at the bottom of the hill in Coquitlam. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was I lived 300 yards away from a Hells Angels clubhouse, so it was a bit of a good working class neighborhood, and it was full of people who were just looking at the labor jobs, blue collar kind of workers, and that was what we're kind of aspiring to. And then I just kind of got the desire to maybe do something a bit more than that, and went to university, got educated, and then tried to find a place to work. And I was applying for jobs, either trying to get into marketing jobs or get into accounting jobs. And then the accounting guys called first, and I ended up with KPMG at the time, and that actually got me onto the KPMG travel program, which got me over to Hungary.
What was that academic journey for you? Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to a place called Douglas College, which is a smaller place in the suburb of Vancouver as well, and that kind of got me on track to do some education where I became a certified general accountant, which I did. I was working as well as studying part-time, so doing my homework on the bus as I was going to the office, and then I joined after that I joined KPMG, where I was able to do the chartered accounting program, which is something I recommend to kids. It was a great way to learn about business and get involved in understanding how businesses work and see the inside how they work a bit. And also working with a global company gave you a chance to travel around and again see the world if you want to.
Right. KPMG, was that the first job you had, or was there more in between?
Well, I started out, I was working when I was 18. A friend and I, we started a company. I was actually a vacuum cleaner salesman for a while.
There you go.
To sell vacuum cleaners, even going door to door sometimes. We were selling wood-burning stoves, fireplace inserts, and so we had a desire to do something to actually get entrepreneurial somehow. But I was 18, he was 19, and so a bit not really understanding how business really worked, and it went good for a couple of years. We had fun. He met his wife during that time, so he's happy. He got a good benefit from that. And then after that's when I decided I need to do something and maybe something a bit more structured, and that's what got me into the education side and trying to build up a career that way.
So KPMG, they call you one night or one day and say, hey, how would you like to go to Europe? What was in their plan? Where in Europe did they want you to be?
Well, we had our final exams there, and I did well in those exams. I came second in KPMG in Canada, and so that kind of put me on the radar, I guess. And they offered us, hey, Mike, what would you like to do? We have a chance to go to Europe for the first time was 3 months. I went to Amsterdam, and I said, sure, I'd love to go. And then in Amsterdam was where I got the travel bug, where I just got, after growing up in Vancouver, I didn't get on a plane until I think it was 18 or 19 for the first time. And then that's when I just realized, wow, this is really cool. There's a lot of great spots in the world, and I want to do more. And that's the time when they offered me the chance to come here, because that's right when you think about what happened after the communist period and the change in system. That was just after the point in time where the Berlin Wall had fallen down, but the new systems were being introduced in this part of the world. The Iron Curtain had fallen, and it was an extremely exciting place to be. And I thought, well, where else could I go in the world? I mean, that would be more interesting than this. I mean, it's part of Europe, and I found in my time in Amsterdam, I just loved Europe. I mean, I just loved the diversity here, the history, the things you can see within a 2-hour drive, and different cultures, different languages, and it was so exciting. And I thought, wow, I could come to Europe and also be in an emerging market.
Right.
With all the new things coming in, all the uncertainty and excitement that goes with that. And for me, it was a no-brainer. That's what I said. It was just like this to make a decision to come when they offered it, because they just opened up, and they were trying to put people in here, and they didn't have any English speakers, mother tongue English speakers, and I was one of the first ones to come into this whole region for them. So, I mean, when I got here, the Russians were still here, and Russian soldiers were in barracks all across Hungary. They weren't part of NATO, weren't part of the EU, weren't part of OECD. So it was the first free elections had just happened in April, and I got here in September. So it was really, I think for me, it was one of the most exciting times of my life when I first got here. And I wasn't alone. There was just all kinds of people from all over the place were coming here, similar age groups, and we formed a real community with everybody. I met lots of other Canadians and other people from other parts of Europe, Americans, and even Asians as well. It was just a really, really, really exciting times. And we had a common bond of trying to understand where we were. Right. What is this place? Hungary with this language, which is a barrier to entry many times. The language is beautiful and I love it, but it's I know guys who speak 4 languages who just gave up trying to learn Hungarian. Right. But so it was just a really fantastic time to be here.
It's hard to believe that not that many years ago, I mean, basically
our lifetimes, yeah.
Yeah, when you started your professional journey, that Hungary was in many respects, when you arrived here, a blank canvas, notwithstanding such a rich tapestry of history leading up to it. But when you got here, as you describe it, it's pretty much like a blank canvas. We're starting fresh.
It wasn't, they kind of knew where they wanted to go, but it wasn't clear the route to get there. Because I think that after 40-something years of the kind of the communist system and being under the part of the Russian-controlled or Soviet Union-controlled area, I think that people were very clear they wanted to head west, and even people like me coming here, I mean, we were treated extremely well, probably too well, considering they thought, oh, you're from the West, you must know something special, and so that was kind of an exciting time to be here. But it was also a time when you realize they learned quickly that, well, not so much difference actually, which is also very positive, and the things just got more normalized. But it wasn't clear what was going to happen. You didn't know what was going to go on. People lived. I kept thinking. I kept extending. Like I told my mom I'd be back in 6 months. So I said, Mom, I'll be back in spring, and no, she's 95 and still waiting for me. But it really was not clear, and most people I knew didn't want to try and invest anything here, to buy anything yet, because you didn't know what's going to happen. It was quite unclear, and that's why we hesitated a bit. And the guys that had the courage to do something, I mean, they did very well at the end, because they really believed that things were going to go the right direction, which as they did. So.
And did they ever? I mean, yeah. What a beautiful, vibrant place.
Oh, it's a spectacular place. And at that time, it was probably the most exciting place to be in the world. And even now, I call it more normal. It's became normal, but from a Canadian perspective, I used to explain to the friends, it's like taking Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and a bit of Vancouver and putting it into one city. Right. As far as the center of center of government, center of business, center of culture, and it just attracts the best of what the country has. A lot of it, I don't want to offend anybody who doesn't live in Budapest, but a lot of it is concentrated here. So that makes life here fun, interesting, and dynamic as well. It's a great city to live in, fantastic city.
So for a Canadian living in Budapest, is life pretty complicated, or is it pretty easy, or
it takes, well, I mean, it takes time. I mean, as I said, the language is thing, and I look at Hungarians versus Canadians, and like Canadians are quite more of the glass is half full kind of society, kind of people. People are usually quite optimistic and energetic and smiling and friendly. And now, you have to understand, in Hungary, they had a tough 100 years. With the World War I, they lost 2/3 of their territory, which is still a sore point. You have to accept that. That's, they had access to an ocean, which they don't have. World War II didn't work out very well, and then post-World War II was also a difficult time. Being occupied effectively and being forced to comply with a system that they didn't create, and so you can understand why they're a bit sometimes skeptical, a bit maybe pessimistic sometimes compared to the Canadian outlook. And so I'd call the Hungarians a bit more glass is half empty. And again, you understand why when if you just think where they came from and what they had to go through. And it's been a tough neighborhood. Now, Hungary's it's nice and flat, so if you're trying to invade, it's a very easy place to invade in that sense. So they've got to be a little bit more cautious about things. And it's a small country. Canada's big. Population's not so much bigger, 3 or 4 times bigger, but it's a smaller country, so they have to be again a bit more aware of what's coming in, the big powers coming in. So you understand that. I find that they sometimes they're a little afraid to take responsibility and stick their neck out. But that's, for example, when I first got here, I did a lot of training courses and bring young people in and try and train them. And these people grew up in the old system, and I'd be asking questions in my great positive Canadian way and excitement. And then I'd say, well, what do you guys think of this point? And I'd listen and wait for an answer. Nothing. And I'd try to ask the question. I thought maybe they didn't understand English, and I'd try a different way, and still nothing. And so I got to the point where I said, okay, what do you think? To get her to actually start engaging. And then she would say something, and it'd be clever, it'd be good, and she understood everything. And I talked to my wife about this, and I said, she's Hungarian, and she said, well, she's in her late 40s, so she grew up in that time as well. And she said, well, in school, you used to get marks for your physics, your math, all these kind of things, but they were also a grade for behavior. And the best way to get the top, and the behavior was ranked the same as the other subjects, the hard subjects. And the best way to get a top mark in behavior was don't say anything. Just be quiet. And if you do that, you'll get a top mark, which goes into your average grade. So it was very simple. And if they say something, a lot of times the system was, oh, that's wrong, as opposed to saying, oh, you could do better. And so people got afraid of sticking their neck out. And I think that's still a legacy that's in the culture now. That people aren't as eager just to try something, and if you fail, you fail, and keep going on. Here, it's if you fail, it's bad. So that's still in the culture a bit.
Well, of course, I mean, if you ingrain that philosophy, that mentality so early on in a child, to say, don't put your hand up and try something or ask something, you're bound to get that response when you're in the KPMG boardroom or a training session. Judith, tell us a little bit about that. You must remember that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's shocking to me too, that I remember back to my childhood, and it was such a huge difference compared to Canadian school system. But it comes from from the history of the country, right? You have to understand that like centuries of oppression. Centuries, first the Turkish oppression, and then the wars, and then the communism. So it basically it's a legacy that we are totally suppressed, not asking questions, and we don't want to be outstanding. Well, it's not true anymore.
No,
I think there's a huge improvement since my childhood, so I can see the example of my children. But it could be like a very palpable difference cultural difference, right?
Yeah, I believe so. And I think it's probably for the region as well, not just Hungary. I don't want to, I think Central Europe had that same kind of legacy, different degrees, of course, and different.
But I remember that I was graded on my behavior, and we were graded on our diligence as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's behavior, diligence, and then the subjects.
Wow.
So
Well,
it's a strange.
I can tell you,
system.
yesterday I had the pleasure of going out into the countryside and visiting a company that makes foldable containers for housing and emergency use and many applications. And I can tell you, they're not afraid to put their hand up and say, we've got an innovative solution here. Because what I saw yesterday was disruptive, to say the least. So clearly there's ingenuity and engineering going on in this place. A lot of it must be hovering in around the chambers of commerce and things like that. Tell us a little bit about your involvement in the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
Well, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, it was a very important organization for us, especially early on, because it was hard to get information. The language barrier was one, and also the availability of information in general was much tougher. You didn't have internet, you didn't have these things as well, where you can just grab things easier, lots of podcasts like this. But so it was a way of people meeting with either Canadian or Canadian focus or interest in Canada or some kind of Canadian connection. And that was, we supported each other. We'd help share information, help share contacts, frankly, and help each other in different situations. You know somebody here, you know somebody there. I need to get this done, or I'm trying to get access to somebody. Can you help with that? And that was a great way to support each other. And a lot of the Canadian businesses that came here first, it shows Canada's strong ethnic backgrounds, because it was basically Hungarian ethnic people, maybe the children of people who left in 1956 in the revolution, for example. Their children came back, or even the 56ers themselves might have come back. They might have been younger when they left, and they came back here to start businesses, to bring, and if they were big players in their business back in Canada or somewhere else, then they brought in that company when they came here as well. And they said, look, this is an opportunity. We should take a look at Hungary. And it was a good way for companies abroad to get trust in this location, because you had somebody who you trusted, who said, yes, you can take a chance on Hungary, it'll work. And that's why the Chamber was important too, to help spread those stories, because stories help build the trust. Here's what worked, here's what didn't work.
Right.
Don't touch that, do this. And so now the Chamber is kept going. It's kept a life of its own because of this foundation. And now you can get information everywhere, and there's more options for people, but still bringing that together as being a Canadian organization which tries to have Canadian values and ways of doing things, that kind of positive approach and positive way of doing things is for people to connect. New people come to Hungary. I used to try and know every Canadian who was in business here, just to have an idea who's there. I know that business got a Canadian, and just connect people. And anytime we had events, I made sure I sent messages out to people. Hey, there's a thing coming up, lobster party's coming up, or whatever it is. Why don't you try and come out and see what you can do, and then just help build the community, because it does help. There is that. It's like putting on an old shoe, you know. You sit down together, a bunch of Canadians, and you just understand each other right away. It doesn't matter what their background is ethnically. If they're Canadian, they're Canadian, and it's just a nice feeling and nice way of doing things, and a good way to spend some time.
Mike, 25 years ago, or whenever you first got involved in the Chamber, you could probably reach out to all the Canadians involved. Can you still do that?
Not anymore. They're more spread out,
Right.
and it's harder to find them sometimes, and they're doing their own things, and as I said, so it's unfortunate. And
is there more of them? There must be more of them.
That's a good question. I think in total there's more Canadians here just doing their own thing, working for other companies. The thing about Canada, like the businesses, there's no huge Canadian businesses. There's a few Canadian businesses here, but again, they had a strong ethnic ties to Hungary, and we don't have the big world champion businesses like other nations do, not as many. And that is a challenge for Canadians, because a lot of the Canadians we have either started their own business, or they're working in bigger organizations like me that have some Canadian. Although this airport has got Canadian pension money in it, so it's controlled by Canadian pension money. I have to tell my mom and say, "Look, Mom, I'm working for your pension. Don't making sure you get it."
So which pension plan is involved?
Well, there's the PSP, and also the Caisse de dépôt de Quebec pension plan is here from Canada. They're the two major, the biggest shareholders. And there's also a Singapore sovereign wealth fund involved as well. So it's long-term, nice long-term, serious money that's involved in infrastructure investing that owns the airport.
Many Canadians would not know that Canadian pension funds are involved in.
And we're doing the best to make sure that dividends will go out and they'll have money for their pensions later.
Well, so that's a great kind of conduit into here right now. What are we doing now? What are you involved in now?
Well, after I spent almost 35 years at KPMG, I left and now I became CFO, so Chief Financial Officer of the airport here, because the guy who runs the show here, Chris Dinsdale, who you'll meet as well, he's an old friend, and actually I feel responsible for him being here in some ways, because when I was president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, there was a business mission to Canada where the Prime Minister, who's current Prime Minister now as well, he was his first term back then, went to Canada, and I also went as part of the business delegation, and I met the commercial counselor in Toronto, the Hungarian commercial counselor, and I met his children. He had a son and a daughter, and then when he came back to Hungary, we kept the connection. And then one day he called me, Mike, can we meet and chat? And I said, oh, sure. He says, well, his son came back, but his daughter was still in Canada from university. And he said, well, my daughter met a Canadian guy there. Great guy, really like him. But we need to get him to Hungary somehow. Can you help get him a job? And this is part of the Canadian mafia working. And and then at KPMG, I talked to a couple of my partners. And I say, look, I know this guy. You give him a chance. He's a Canadian guy. I'm sure he'll be full of energy and optimism. Give him a chance. And then they met him, and then that's how he came to Hungary. And his first job in Hungary was working at KPMG. And that got him into the country. And the commercial counselor, a friend, I call him a friend, he was happy to get his daughter home, and with her Canadian boyfriend at the time, now Canadian son-in-law. And now he's my boss at the airport 18 years later. So it's a nice way that we connected and kept in touch. And I think it's a nice example of how the network works and how you help each other.
But isn't that such a wonderful thing about our journeys through life and how we connect with people, and and how our lives intertwine, and that's a beautiful story. So he's now your boss. You guys are friends, clearly, right? You introduced his wife was from. Unbelievable story to see where we are today.
Yeah,
it's magical.
We call this serendipity.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know where you start in a journey. You have no idea where you're going to end up. I mean, I would never predict that I'd still be here after all these years. No way in the world. But that's just how it is. You make decisions 6 months ahead, 1 year ahead, a couple of years ahead. Then you start meeting people. I mean, when I'm recruiting, when I used to be recruiting at KPMG, I mean, my target, if I wanted to get a foreigner here, I wanted to keep him here, because they were always saying, well, I don't want to commit, it's so far away. And I said, look, give me 6 months. That's the magic number. I hate to be politically incorrect, but get a guy here in his mid-late 20s who's kind of normal guy. Get him here for 6 months, and then
they're hooked.
Well, they're hooked, yeah. And then next thing you know, he'll be having meat soup with grandma in the countryside somewhere with his new Hungarian girlfriend or something. So that's what happens. And that's so many guys who come here, and some of my friends that happened as well. They have Hungarian wives. They're integrated here, and some have left, and then they come back. It's really amazing. It's a nice place to live.
Mike, your philosophy on recruiting is very effective. Once people touch something and they see it, and particularly if you've got a great product to sell, Hungary, if you've got a great product to sell, they want to stay. There's no doubt. Right. You just got to get them to touch it and feel it and see it,
and
right?
take away the fear factor and the uncertainty, and then they realize, oh, this is a nice place. Business-wise, you got to be more cautious in business. I think business-wise, I think a lot of the successful businesses here are ones that will they have a market somewhere else. I mean, the domestic market's not huge, and then you got a lot more competition with the local players. You don't have home field advantage. But if you have a market somewhere else, and this area of Europe, and Hungary is a great example of a lower cost production facility, or a way to build up something for export. And a lot of the successful companies here have strong export markets. They've manufactured here, it might be services as well from here, and then export it. And then those are successful businesses too. So you can A lot of people meet who are working for the foreign-owned companies that have operations here where they're export-oriented. And not just things you touch, services as well. A lot of things. The shared service centers are very, very big here and successful. And even our business, like I had my old job at KPMG, we were building up a service center here that had global impact. We were actually servicing our colleagues around the world from here. So it's a good place. Hungarians are educated, clever, work hard, and you can get a lot done here. So
Perfect recipe for success there.
It is, yeah. If you have the market somewhere else, particularly, then it's okay.
Yeah. But getting back to that touching feeling and falling in love with it, let's talk a little bit about tourism. Like, let's talk about Canadians that might be looking at Hungary. Pretty misunderstood place. And I can understand why. It's a fairly complex history to get to where we are today. Understood how it can be a little misunderstood, but once you touch it, you fall in love with it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about tourism in here and what this beautiful place has to offer.
I think people are sometimes amazed when they first come here, and all you have to do is take them walking along the Danube at night, early evening, when the lights are on, etc. It's breathtaking, and the meeting people, they're usually friendly and warm, and they're curious about you, where you're from, and they start asking questions. And the investment in infrastructure has been immense over the last few years. So it's, as you said, things are cleaned up. The national monuments have been restored. They've invested a lot in the architecture that's been here before. They're making, Hungary's got incredibly strong cultural life as well in classical music. They've got the opera house here is spectacular. It's world class. The music academy here is absolutely world class. It's just spectacular, and you can attract tourists from all different types of age groups and backgrounds and interests. Because if you're a hard party person, they have an incredible party district near it's called the old Jewish Quarter area. It's unbelievable. Ruined pubs. That the concept has been taken elsewhere. It started here and then been taken elsewhere. Taking an old building, literally guys just putting down some chairs, making it safe and livable, so to speak, for a bar, starting a bar there, and you'd attract people wearing suits, people wearing jeans and T-shirts, and all together at the same time. And that started this whole ruined bar culture here, and then it's just expanded. That whole area is now that. So you can attract those kind of people, guys who fly here, or people who fly here for weekends. And then, I talk to guys from the UK, for example, and they'll say, with the low-cost airlines, they can get here, have a weekend in Hungary for roughly the cost it would have cost them just to go out locally in their pub down the street in the UK somewhere. So just because it's very high value for money. And then you've got the riverboats. If you look at all the advertising for riverboat tourism in this area of Europe, 50% of the visuals, because I've been in Canada watching the advertisements, 50% of the visuals are Budapest and Hungary. Because it's so dramatic. The river, Hungary's really used the river and really taken advantage of the natural attributes there. And now what's growing as well is going to the countryside, getting outside of Budapest and going to the regions. And there's lots of investment there and lots of different things you can do there, from horseback riding to bicycling, classical tourism, sailing. Lake Balaton is a wonderful lake. It's not very deep, so the water gets nice and warm in the summertime. Good for swimming, but it's a sailing culture. You don't have all these motorboats and jet skis and things like that making a lot of noise, stirring up things. It's a sailing, so it's a bit more, very much wine oriented. For people who like wine, there's some fantastic vineyards, and you can actually have wine tours now, similar to going to the Loire Valley in France. Maybe the Okanagan and BC, where I'm from, also have these wine tours and things. You can do that. So that's also another attractive part of Hungary. Thermal baths. If you want to go to either the Turks, one of the positive legacies of the Turks being here was the thermal baths that they've left behind. And I've been many times with buddies. You go to these places and you're wearing just a little call it a modesty cloth, and you're going from one bath to the other, different temperatures, and just enjoying the going back in time a few hundred years. It's exactly the feeling. So, and they have other baths which are co-ed as well, or have women's days, men's days. It depends on which one you're talking about. So there's an incredible number of things you can do, and just to be a little adventurous, go out and try it.
And what I hear from a lot of Canadians that they're hesitant to come to Hungary because they don't speak the language. But how do you find that the English speaking evolved throughout these years? Because probably 30 years ago, not very many people spoke English.
When I got here, they usually answered me in German. Russian, they all learned Russian, but it wasn't. I met many Hungarians who were very proud of getting through 8 years of Russian and not being able to speak a word.
Yes, yes.
So they're very proud of that. But German is what they usually answered me in, because there was a strong, East Germans were here, and this was a meeting point for East Germans and West Germans.
Right.
They would come to Hungary as kind of the neutral territory where they could meet during the old regime, call it the old system. So German was much stronger. English was younger people, academics, but now it's widespread. Now I think English is, every kid learns English in school, whether they like it or not. That's the default second language for everybody. And then your third language is your language you're passionate about. What do you want to learn? That's how it usually goes. But English is widely spoken. Even in small shops, you can get by with broken English somehow.
Yeah, especially with the people who are working in the hospitality business,
yeah,
that their English is almost perfect. And you and I went to a restaurant where the waitress was talking perfect English with 100%. Perfect pronunciation, and then they told us that they've learned from Netflix, just watching Netflix movies, and they have the perfect accent, even English. So it was easy for you to get around in the city
100%.
Speaking English.
No, 100%. Jerry and I are both from Newfoundland, and they understood us right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So they clearly, if they can understand a Newfoundlander's accent.
Well, did you bring some screech with you?
We didn't bring any screech with us. Affordability to visit Hungary. I noticed as I walked around the airport today, a lot of airlines coming in and out of here. Airlines, so clearly there's a big influx of people.
Absolutely.
It must be affordable to come here.
It's value for money. I think if people look at Hungary as value for money, I mean, from a Canadian perspective, going for a restaurant or so, it's probably anywhere from 20 to 40, 50% cheaper. It depends what you're doing. I mean, if you're, especially alcohol is much cheaper generally. So if you like a couple of drinks with your meal or whatever, then a couple of drinks in general, then it's good value. And the pricing, because Hungary is not as wealthy as Canada. I mean, the GDP is much lower, and so therefore the purchasing power is not as strong, so the natural price levels are lower anyway, particularly when services are involved, because wages are lower too. So that helps make it more affordable for tourists to come here, and they can enjoy themselves. It's usually, they think it is good value for money, and still good quality, great service. You can go to 5-star, you can go to Michelin-star restaurants. I think there's a couple 2-star Michelin restaurants now in Hungary, which is amazing. So you can go to that level if you like, or just go to a local kind of restaurant that local people would go to, and then you have nice, good, hearty Hungarian food and at a very good price. So it is affordable for people to come here, and I think that I've had my family come here, and we're not a wealthy family at all, and they feel really relaxed going around here. So
on that note, Mike, how many Canadians have you brought over in the fullness of time?
Well, I mean, we make sure we have an extra guest room, that's for sure. And every time someone's coming through Budapest, there's someone coming. Like right now, I've got a friend of mine whose daughter's coming. She'll be here in just over a week. I've never even met her because she's only in her early 20s, so I'd never even met her before. But the friend calls, says, "Mike, my daughter's coming to Budapest. Do you mind putting her up for a few nights?" "Sure, come on in. We got a guest room." Yeah, okay. So I'm going to meet her. She's bringing a friend with her, and that happens regularly. So and I've had my family come. My friends have been here a few times. My cousins. I got one cousin who was a pilot. He just retired from Air Canada, and so he can get really cheap. He's been here 4 times. I think he loves it. I got to take him on the tour, the ruined pubs, the certain restaurant. He's got his set way he wants to go when he comes here too already. So
you must have a regular routine that you take people through. You've got to see. Yeah,
there's certain things I know that are. They're no lose, that's for sure. They're definite wins. Take them on these places, and people just love them. So it's just.
So Mike, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I'm interested in the family. Your kids were born in Hungary, right?
Well, I've got 3 kids. I got a daughter who's 25 now.
Yeah.
I did it the hard way, though. I had 2 wives to get 3 kids. So
Okay.
it's easier to do it one wife for all of them, but I did it the hard way. My first wife was Austrian, and so my daughter was, she grew up in Hungary, but she was born in Austria because her mother was more comfortable having the baby there at the time. But she's living in Vienna right now. And then I've got 2 sons, and one's 15, one's 13. That was my last wife, who I met on a flight, so it's good connection to the airport. I was flying from London to Budapest, and I met her. She was stewardess on Hungarian Airlines at the time,
Okay.
so didn't have much time. I had to work fast. I only had 20 minutes before we landed. So, but anyway, and so that's I call her my last wife. She said, "Well, that's not very romantic," but yeah, but you're my last wife, I told her. And so. My son, they both play hockey players. Both hockey players. My sons. My 15-year-old son's living in Finland actually right now, playing hockey there with another group of Hungarian boys who are trying to get. You know, Finland's more of a hockey country than Hungary, although Hungary's passionate about it and growing. But I got a 13-year-old son who's also playing hockey and living with us. So I got one child at home of the 3. The other 2 are spread out.
Yes. So I have abundant experience raising Hungarian kids in Canada, but I'm really interested in how is it raising Canadian kids
Here.
or what you hear in a mixed family, right? As you mentioned that your wife is Hungarian, you're Canadian. So the 2 cultures, the parenting, and all that would be fascinating to know.
I mean,
more.
I think it's another reason when you asked about Canadians here. I mean, Canadians will feel quite comfortable here because I think a lot of the Hungarians are very family-centric, very family-centric. If you're planning something, weekends tend to be for family. So you want to plan something with other people coming, it's better to do it midweek. So families are very important, and my wife's family, who has just basically adopted us, including my daughter. Like my daughter, when she was young, would go visit my wife. Wasn't my wife yet, but soon to be wife, visit the family, and my daughter was 4 or 5 years old, and basically my poor soon-to-be father-in-law, he got kicked out of the bed, so my daughter ended up sleeping in the same room with my soon-to-be mother-in-law, and then he slept on the couch. So they just basically welcomed her, and then with my own son now, so we really got well integrated. Now, even though the kids all feel very Canadian, they're still Hungarian. Even my daughter feels Hungarian, and they just accepted us. And as far as raising the children, there's not too many differences in how it's, at least what I've experienced. My wife's tougher than me, that's no question about it. She's much more strict, and she's the bad cop, I'm the good cop. It's easier for me to play that. But it's, I think that they're very open and being welcomed in there. It's funny that people, I think, well, Hungarians are against foreigners, but not at all. I mean, when you get personal level, you get absolutely brought into the family, and you're welcome into it, and you're integrated into it. It's they expect you to be there, and I really enjoy it a lot. Language can be an issue. I know friends of mine who don't speak Hungarian very well, and the Hungarian family doesn't speak English very well. They have a bit more time, but lots of smiling and broken conversations, and they make it work. So once you're part of the family, you're in. You're part of the family.
I always got this question when I was living in Canada, and what language do you speak at home? So now I pass on this question. What language do you speak at home?
I guess it's 50. With the kids, I only speak English. With all of them. I only spoke English with them. Even, I remember when they were young, they'd try and cheat. They'd answer me. My daughter answered me in German. My sons answered me in Hungarian. And I'd say, "Oh, sorry, I don't understand. Were you trying to say that you want a glass of water? Is that what you're trying to say?" "Yes." "Okay, didn't say it." "Okay." Then I got them the water, and they say, "Okay, Dad," and that was a way to force them. And now it's automatic. It's incredible how the language clicks. And you see a face, you speak a language. We'll be in a group of, say, Hungarians and speaking Hungarian, that my daughter will turn to me and speak to me in English. Or my sons will do the same thing, even though everybody else is speaking Hungarian around us, and I understand what they're talking about, etc. So I was disciplined about it, because I knew I didn't want to speak to them in my second or whatever language, with my crappy accent and bad grammar or whatever. I wanted to speak in my mother tongue to them, and I forced it on them.
So how many languages do they speak?
Well, my daughter's mother tongue fluent in 3, like German, English, and Hungarian. boys are English and Hungarian.
Wow, that's fantastic at
Look,
that young
guys
age.
are a bit lazier. Yeah,
Mike, there'd be many people that would listen to this podcast and would be intrigued by what it is to be a hockey mom or dad in Hungary. What's that look like? You're running the rinks just like they do back home?
You're absolutely right. You're doing that. You're grabbing the bags. You're getting the skates sharpened. You're dragging people out there. You're standing in a cold, freezing rink, watching it. Watching a game or practice, and it works pretty much the same as home. And the Hungarians it's growing sport here. Nice thing is it's getting more popular. There's more rinks being built. I mean, for a time, there's only one rink in the whole country. I mean, they needed to, so now they're being spread all over the place, and you can see the growth of the game, and they're investing a lot more into it too, so the quality is going to go up as well. Like Hungary's kind of just outside, right in the borderline between where the division where Canada plays and versus the next level down, but they're trying to grow it now, and I'm hoping that in 10 years, Hungary will make it up to the top 16 level, but we'll see. I mean, it's going to be hard, but it's the same challenges you have as Canada, and the nice thing is they don't have too many six in the morning practices. A little bit more
because ice time must not be sought after, right?
Yeah, ice time's hard to get,
right?
Because there's not many rinks, and,
right.
And so then you have to really book things and get it organized. And when there's ice time, you're there. You make sure you're there. Like I never played hockey in Canada. I couldn't skate. But I had Hungarian friends who said they were kind of a bit embarrassed, joking. They said, "Mike, I'm a bit embarrassed. You're my Canadian friend, but you don't even play hockey." And so then I decided it was on my bucket list. So 6 years ago, I started just trying to join my company had some ice time, and I joined there. I said, "Look, I'm one of the guys paying for it. I'm just going to go." And I started playing, and so now I actually learned how to play. I can say I'm a Canadian, like I plays hockey. And I actually learned how to play in Hungary. So, and one of our games was filmed, and I showed it to my buddies in Canada, and he said he almost hurt his side laughing at me, but
right.
Just kind of like a robot on the ice. But it was still. I say I can play hockey now, which is great, and so I can play. Sometimes we play for fun, just pick up games, and I play with my sons now too. They're skating all around me, but still, it was so
they're much
cool
better
to be on the
than
ice
you.
with it. Oh, of course, they're miles ahead of me, but.
So that KPMG team out of Hungary probably couldn't compete with the team out of Halifax or Toronto.
I don't think so.
It'd be a little bit like Slapshot.
Maybe if you guys skate backwards, that might work.
What's your team back home?
Canucks. I'm a Canucks
You're
guy.
a Canucks guy. Okay,
Die hard, unfortunately.
I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm just saying, even now we play, there's a group of Canadian guys too that I met here. Some of their school teachers at the American school, and another couple buddies that I know here. And on Sunday nights we get together and play just for fun. And those guys played when they were young, and so they got, they can skate, can actually play. But the good thing is they're all over 50. And I'm probably in better shape than they are. So the first part of the game, they're a bit but by the end they're huffing and puffing. I'm still okay, let's keep going. So that's not so bad, but it's kind of fun to play with them. They're very, very patient with me.
Right.
I'm even more excited now that the Hungarian Ice Hockey Federation just invited us to watch the game, the Hungary-Japan game tomorrow night.
Very nice, yeah.
So as
fun.
you said, it's an emerging sport in Hungary too.
Yeah, it sounds like there's so many emerging things in Hungary, whether it's business, tourism, sport.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place. What's on the horizon?
What's next?
What's next for this country and you and this airport? Tell us all about you're excited about.
Well, I'll start with the airport. It's an easy question, and then you'll meet the president or the CEO later. But I mean, there are huge expansion plans here. I mean, the growth, they want to double the capacity of the airport within the next, within 10 years. So just to take in that tourism and the travel. And as Hungarians get wealthier, then they'll want to travel too. So you got the people leaving, people coming, and that turning over people. The people take more trips a year rather than just one. They'll take 2-3 trips a year to go to different places and bring that tourism in as well. So that's big plans for this airport. When you come back in 5-10 years, you'll see a lot of change here. You'll see a much bigger place, more modern again, even more modern, etc. So that's a lot of plans there. For me, I mean, I'm happy here right now, so I'll see how things go. I guess I got young kids. I'm a bit older, but I got younger kids. That's the second family syndrome. But I'm also excited about that and keeping involved in their lives and see where it takes them. I mean, next steps are going to be university and where that goes. That's the personal kind of journey that we'll be on. And No, my wife, she complains again. I think she complains a lot about me sometimes. I guess didn't realize it, but she says though she married a foreigner. And so she always wanted to live outside of Hungary. She thought, oh great, I married a foreigner, I got a chance to live outside of Hungary.
Right.
But I'm the one who wants to stay. And she's the one that wants to live somewhere else, but I'm happy staying here. So she goes, oh, what bad luck I had, she said.
Do you travel back and forth to Canada a lot?
Oh yeah, I try to go minimum, before COVID times, I mean, I was back there minimum 3 times a year, twice with the family, once by myself.
Right.
And I'll be going again in December. I go by myself just for a week. You know, my she's 95, and I don't want to waste any time, so I get back to see her, and also my friends and cousins and brother and sister, so I make sure I get back. I never planned to leave Canada. I had no reason to leave. I mean, I love Canada. Yeah. I just, that's how life ended up, so I go back regularly. When
you go back, people must be curious about Hungary. They must ask you all kinds of questions.
They do, but frankly, until people have been here, it's hard to really explain much. So I'd say a little bit about it, but I try and find if they've been somewhere in Europe maybe, and then I can at least talk about that and then say, oh yeah, that's similar to this or here. I find that people, they need to be here to really understand it. It's easier, but I do let them know what's going on, like especially people who are thinking of a tour, like a tour or being a tourist, taking the river tours or whatever they're thinking of doing, then that I can have a real good conversation with them about what it, but just generally talking about Hungary, it's easier to get them here. And then once they've been here, then we have a much better conversation when I go back, or I talk to them and I say, oh yeah, I'm over here, remember this place? And we're talking on the phone or something, and that's nice. Well, less of trying to explain it. They're interested. There's a lot of political issues going on right now, so not the best press about Hungary. So I'm getting lots of questions about that. You know, what's it like over there? Is it really bad? Or, you know, the war, the Ukraine is such an unfortunate situation. I mean, that I get a lot of questions. What's that like? And you know, we actually had some refugees in our house for a couple of groups of refugees were in our house for a while near the beginning of the war, etc. Just so it was very personal in that sense, and people ask about that.
And I know that for Canadians, like the relationship to distance is so different because we're talking about a vast country, and Hungary is a small country. So when they heard, my Canadian friends heard about the war in the Ukraine, they thought that we literally feel the impact because we're so close. It's 400 kilometers away from here. Right. But in fact, the country has no impact whatsoever. So everything is going as normal, right?
Yeah, the only visible side was seeing the refugees, the Ukrainians here.
Exactly.
I mean, that was the most visible side. All the train stations had stations set up for them, areas set up for them to come and just be helped there, and etc. You know, my example, I got a call from a friend of mine who's living in Texas now, but he worked in Ukraine at a bank, and he had been called by one of his old colleagues and said, look, you know, it was a Saturday night, he called me, I think 7:30 in the evening, my time, and you know, said, Mike, my guy's wife and his daughter are on a train coming to Budapest. They'll be arriving in an hour or 9 o'clock at night or something. You know, can you help? You know, and so then, yeah, okay. And so he got the call at 7:30. I was at the train station at 9 o'clock waiting for them with a sign, put their names on it, because I had no idea who they were or where they're coming from, and just to help. But that's the closest we came to it, I'd say, in practice. And also, we're feeling it now because you know the Russian, or Putin, Mr. Putin, I guess, the price of energy's gone up bananas, which is increasing the price of everything. Right. You know, it's just that's where you feel it too. And as I said, Hungarians aren't wealthy people in general. I mean, the average person, and so that the price impacts of food and energy. It's making a big impact on people's lives, unfortunately. So,
Mike, can I go back and talk a little bit about you took some refugees into your home?
Yeah, just for a few nights, you know, just 3 or 4 nights, just to get out of there and get their bearings again, and then. But most refugees that came through had someplace else to go. Right. They had, in this case, one group was going to Spain because they had 2 daughters. One daughter was with the mother, and the other daughter was already there with her husband or something. They'd gone there a month earlier, so they were moving on. Another group, they were Hungarian Ukrainians. We ended up putting them in apartments, and so they're still living in Hungary actually, because they speak the language and they're working here now. So that's how we just kind of give them a place to get settled, get organized again, have a chance to just take a deep breath and realize, okay, we're we're safe, and let's now they can plan their lives a bit and they can move on. So they haven't come back yet, as far as I know, unfortunately.
Right.
But I'm not sure of the ones in Spain, but the ones in the Hungarians are still living here. I know that. Hungarians, yeah.
What a wonderful journey you've taken us on here. You know, and I love how you talk about when you want people to touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the end here, you talk about you want people that have come here and seen it, and you can have a deeper conversation with them. And it's so accessible now. Again, as I walked through the airport and I looked at the volume of air traffic coming in here, it's so accessible that if you did visit London for a week or in Paris for a week, it's such an easy journey over.
Absolutely.
Spend a couple of days,
Yeah.
touch it, feel it, fall in love with it. It's easy to fall
Absolutely.
in love with.
It's a fantastic 2 to 4 day trip. I mean, coming here, and then you come back and you expand it and see even more. So it's I absolutely agree, and that's why I love living in Europe. Is that you can this 2-3 hour flight and you're doing something quite different. So seeing something a bit different. So it's great. I agree with that. I would recommend anybody to come here for, give it a try.
I mean, you can go to Paris, you can go to Barcelona for a day trip. You can leave the airport early in the morning and then come back in the evening if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's this accessible.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And the low-cost airlines we have a huge base here for low-cost airlines, and they make it very affordable, very affordable. So the Wizz Air, Ryanair, the big names that are using this airport, and you go online and you'll find a flight to all different kinds of destinations. And the nice thing what they're doing, they're not just going to the hubs, they're going to these kind of other cities you would already have thought of.
Never even thought of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes that's the best journey, isn't it?
Well, I've heard of people that just in the morning they say, let's go to the airport with a bag and let's see what we can get. Let's find out what flight we can get that's cheap or whatever, and they go away for a couple of days. And they just say, okay, we go to wherever.
We gotta try this. I've never tried that one.
You have to be flexible. I mean, it's tough to do. Yeah, you gotta have some free time.
That's a concept in Canada that's not, understood.
Yeah.
You're getting on a flight in Canada, you're going somewhere, right? I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
It's everything in Canada, as we talked about, even 400 kilometers right now from the Ukraine. I mean, 400 kilometers in Canada, people drive that to get to Costco. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's our concept of distance is all completely skewed and different than here. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I can't begin to thank you enough for allowing us into your journey, quite honestly. One thing that really jumps off the page for me is the way you describe being welcome into your last wife's family as that warm embrace.
Absolutely.
And that's the way I feel when I come here. It is like a warm embrace when you come to Hungary. When I walk through the doors of this airport, and I've been in a lot of airports, Mike, I told you at the beginning, there's a warm embrace about this one, something different. There's something different happening here than everywhere else. What do you think the secret sauce is here? Where does this warm embrace come from?
Well, I think it's the people, the culture here, the people here, as well as, I have to say, tone from the top too. I mean, it's very much a focus on quality passenger experience and making certain that people enjoy coming through this airport. Travel can be a lot of fun. It can be very stressful as well, and being able to try to remove the stress or reduce the stress and allow people to just enjoy it, to make sure that they're going through the security line. It's organized well. We're staffing up as much as possible so to make the waiting times low, and training the people on how to treat the passengers as customers, not a burden that you're trying to get through the process, but actually as customers, and that's part of it as well. And so have that real passenger experience, customer focus. And again, as I said, tone from the top. I mean, the leadership team I'm meeting here and getting to know better, they're really top quality, and they're absolutely focused on delivering that quality experience to the passengers. So I think that's what you're feeling. And it's great news that you are feeling that. It's really nice to hear. And that's part of the journey as well, to continue going here. And it's another reason why I'm pretty happy with my decision to join the place here. It's fun.
It must be exciting to be a part of something like that.
It is fun. It feels very, very, very cool to be part of something that's going to grow and build it and make an impact on things. So I'm very happy to be here right now. So,
growing up down the road from the Hells Angels so many years ago, Did you ever envision your life would turn out like this? And this would be your place in the world, and you're making an impact.
When I was a kid, I mean, I thought about, okay, I get a good job at the mill or something like that. That was kind of get paid well, maybe a fireman or something. That was kind of the thoughts when I was younger. No way. Well, being in this city now wasn't even an option back then when I was a kid. It didn't exist as an option because this was a closed area. No way in the world I would have planned this or thought I'd be over here, or the kind of experiences I've had. And never in a million years would I have planned this or thought about it when I was growing up in that neighborhood. So
yeah, you know, oftentimes we ask our guests who have had a pretty good journey like yourself here and done some very interesting things to leave the audience with a piece of advice. What would a piece of advice be?
Piece of advice, I guess. Actually, I was in a course, and a guy was like a motivational kind of guy, and he was actually Canadian as well, and just by chance, and he was talking to a global meeting, and he said one thing about, you know, having the courage to do things, and he said, "Leap, and the net will appear." And I always thought that's kind of a cool way of looking at it. No, don't be silly, of course, but leap and the net will appear. That was kind of a nice way to give people courage to try something and take a next step. So,
Judith, what do you think?
Well, it's fascinating, and I've known Mike for a year now, but I didn't know that much about his life, which is inspiring for me too. So I try to live up to his standards and the expectation. I feel privileged to work with you.
Well, another wonderful edition of GaleForceWins, and I can tell you what a great conversation it was today in such a beautiful city, in such a beautiful airport. I want to thank you for allowing us into your journey today, and it's just been a real pleasure. What does the world need more of, Judith?
More Mike Carlson.
And palinka.
And more palinka.
Have some palinka. Try some Bulgarian palinka. That'll help you put you on the right path. Good.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, man.
On the day this interview was recorded, we were given unprecedented access to the Budapest airport. We traveled all around the back runways. We were inside the terminal, and there was over 110 pictures and short videos that we took. What we will do is put those up on some sort of a collage type video on our YouTube channel. I don't have it edited yet, but it will be there eventually. Just to let you know that if you watch this interview, we will have those pictures and videos in a collage for you.
Thank you for tuning in to GaleForceWins. That's GaleForceWins, WINS.com.